afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the Insurtech Evolution webinar series. Today, we're sitting down with a panel of insurance experts to talk about the replacement of legacy systems and driving speed to market. During this session, we'll delve into pressing questions surrounding speed to market, the challenges posed by legacy systems, and the strategies for overcoming those obstacles. I'm Rebecca Angel, VP of Strategic Alliances at GhostDraft, your moderator for today's discussion. With me, I have Jeff Bischoff, Vice President of Information Technology at Hartford Mutual Insurance Group, Chris Merkel, VP and Chief Architect at Sapiens, and Angie Nguyen, Head of GhostDraft North America. During the discussion, you may ask questions in the Q&A area. And for any questions that we don't get to today, one of our insurance experts will contact you to answer them. All right, let's get started. So in 2024, many carriers prioritize speed to market as a top goal, but this comes with many challenges, as you all well know, in the insurance industry. From your perspective, what are some common obstacles insurers face when trying to get to market faster?
Sure, Rebecca, I'll start. So I think before we even delve into the IT aspect of that question, we go through a variety of other issues that in the insurance world has to deal with. Some of those being state regulations, filings, approvals, and adoption. What I've seen is, as all of that's taking place, IT's trying to get a head start and then being in our speed to market with new products or offerings or even state filings. But all of that has to take place first, which certainly has slowed over the last probably 5 years from the speed in which that type of stuff used to get processed.
Yeah, and
I'm going to
go
ahead, Chris.
No, Angie, ladies first.
Okay, I was just going to say that I often see that process. It takes a long time, and it also requires a lot of collaboration inside of the carrier to be able to make sure that kind of everyone's on the same page about where you are because that filing especially takes such a long time, making sure that everybody understands when those things actually get approved. And that collaboration sometimes doesn't always happen very smoothly.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to offer also is I see a lot of times where you're replacing admin systems and logic is buried in code and the people who wrote it are long gone and you're trying to mine the rules out, you're trying to get your requirements together. Most of the time, that's where you see a lot of time being spent on projects, is trying to understand what do you even want. I've had situations where we've started a sales process and people are like, well, we're on ISO and we're all the latest. And then we find out, during discovery that they're like 10% ISO and 90% overridden, and they've got their own custom forms. They've got all these things that they do. And, the people who are running the selection process didn't even know these things. So there's a lot of that type of stuff that happens in a large carrier, especially.
Those are some excellent points. So, and with talking about those obstacles, that leads me to my next question. And this is kind of a two-pronged question, really. So what role do you see technology playing in accelerating speed to market and driving efficiency? And how does collaboration and successful partnerships between insurtech companies help insurers reach those new levels of operational efficiency?
Well, so as Chris alluded to and Angie alluded to, having a run book for prior work is very helpful to the IT department as well, right? For speed to market as these things are being approved and worked on. You know what you've done in the past. The state filing kind of is a state filing. A new product kind of is a new product. Of course, they have all their different caveats to them, but you've done this work in the past in your system. And so the better you are with that type of stuff, having a good playbook, having a good steps and procedures, and also working with your business partners on understanding that helps as well for them too. And I think that's what, from an IT perspective, with the analytical thinking, with the processes and things like that, I think that's what helps to drive a little better speed. I think when you're talking about our partners, really having configurable systems, not a lot of deep code, helps quite a bit. I think being able to utilize systems that in the past were heavily developed, and now can be a little lighter on that, but get you output is kind of critical too. So we can get ahead of the cart, if you will, right? We don't have to wait for that filing to be completed to begin the work. And then what we'll do is go back and kind of just make the changes as they've changed in the filings and things like that too. And that's certainly given us much greater speed to market in the IT side of the insurance.
Fantastic. Angie or Chris, do you want to elaborate on collaboration and partnerships?
Yeah, so I mean, working for a vendor, I think integration has always been really important to us. We actively support that concept ecosystem and having pre-integrated components to a variety of systems, so that when a carrier purchases our technology, often the plumbing work of hooking our technology in with other things has already been done. And we can just hand them a piece of code that will make those things just work. And I think that's important, because if a carrier is especially moving to a brand new system and they're purchasing kind of best of breed technologies from a variety of vendors, and then they have to face the integration issue, that's going to take a lot of time. And so we're trying to help support that speed to market when purchasing technology from a variety of vendors through integrations that are pre-built.
Yeah, I think when we approach a project, we have an ongoing joke here that if you've seen one insurance company, you've seen one insurance company. Everyone does things a little differently, and I'm sure Jeff will think that they do things the right way, just like every other company thinks they do things the right way. And so from our perspective, the data is key. The data model, being able to change it, being flexible, being able to move things around, having that all in configuration as opposed to code is huge. And that allows us to change integration points. That allows us to pre-integrate with, things like printing documents and things like that, so we can export the model out. And the key thing then also when it comes to upgrades to the code, it's huge, because now, when you give a new version of the code, it's like giving a new version of Word. You don't have to go and open up all your Word documents. The Word document stays the same. It's the same thing with a configurable system. The code should be backwards compatible, so you can just upgrade the code, get new features, capabilities, and move on, and not have to worry about retesting everything for, months and months and months. So I think those are some key things, around having a flexible system, as Jeff mentioned, to be able to change things, see things, tweak things, and put things in front of people quickly, and then work from there. So yeah, that's my perspective on that approach, on those things that help you get the speed.
Excellent. So, let's talk about strategy now. Now that we've covered, common obstacles that we have and the role of technology partners, what strategies do you see successful carriers, Jeff, you guys being one of those, employ to overcome challenges associated with legacy systems and ensure a smooth transition towards more efficient operations?
So absolutely, for us, we are in the process of replacing our 3 core systems. 2 of them have been replaced, and by August, our third core system, right? That's policy, billing, and claims. Our third one will be replaced with modern solutions. And so for us, that transition was critical to keeping us being able to do a lot of the stuff we're talking about today, like speed to market, expansion, and those type of things. What these modern systems are doing is allowing for less deep coding and more being able to, and we've used the term a lot here today, but a lot more configurable. And in configuration, there's a speed that you get with that as well. For us, the most important thing with all 3 of our core replacement systems, and then kind of how they work and interact with like GhostDraft for our print, right, is that they do interact with them directly, and that these systems are built with the ability to work together. And they're not these core systems that you have to buy the whole suite of the same product or something like that, where they only integrate with 1 or 2 vendor type solutions on top of the layer that is the primary system. And so for us, that vetting process was really important to us. And now what we know is in replacement of our legacy systems, our new systems all talk to one another, and however you want to talk about that, like through XML, through being able to integrate with one another, however that might be. But that's critical to us. And then to be able to extract from those systems as well into our data lake, into our financial reporting, just really important stuff that we made sure that we vetted before we decided vendors and things like that to upgrade our systems.
So I've been part of hundreds, maybe thousands of form implementations, which I know is revealing how old I am, but there it is, it's out there. And the successful implementations that I've seen take a holistic approach to so if you talk agile, right? So we're gonna implement a particular coverage, and let's take a holistic approach to that coverage. So I'm gonna I'm gonna look at the rating, the pricing, the underwriting rules, and the forms that need to be attached to the implementation of that coverage. And I'm going to do it all together at one time. Those implementations actually go pretty smoothly. I've seen other implementations where the kind of third-party technology that sits around the PAS, so forms being one of them, was running on its own program, not attached to the PAS components. And you get to a point where you're like, oh, this form must print a piece of data that we didn't know about. And when we configured the screens, we didn't add it to the screen. And so you end up with this mismatch at the end. And so, when I think about we're trying to be efficient and do things quickly, it's really about focus, and it's about kind of taking that holistic view so that you're only having to do things once. You're not having to continue to go back and revise your screens because you missed data that needs to print on forms, for example.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Angie. I see that a lot. At the end of the day, we're selling a contract. It has to, that's the thing that the person gets when they're done with this. It's a promise to pay when something goes wrong. And, obviously there's a lot of data that goes into that. You got to price it, you have to underwrite it. But the most important thing at the end of the day is you got to print it. You got to be able to put that contract in their hands and make sure that contract is right. And it also follows all the laws and regulations and so forth. So that's a great point, that you got to make sure that you hit those things in that project. It's going to be part of your project plan as you go, making sure that you hit those things. And the way we typically do those types of things is, as we're adding the fields to the UI, as we're adding those things, the coverages, the limits, deductibles, and so forth, we get the rating. Make sure you're passing over the data stream over to the forms print, as part of your sprint process. Typically slightly delayed a little because you want to make sure you hit those other things first. You gotta get on the UI and make sure you capture it, but make sure you're considering that. And then you can pass that information over and then slowly crank out, here's 10 coverages in this sprint, and let's put in the next, the forms that go with those 10 coverages and so forth. And if you kind of hit it like that, you just go through a cycle. You start getting a rhythm on these projects, and next thing you know, it's all set and you're all done.
Sometimes I find that because these systems are so configurable, we kind of fall into that like, oh, well, we'll get most of them and then we'll come back and do the rest. But that rework cycle is so much slower than doing the analysis and doing it all at one time.
Yeah, and I would say, of course we're talking about print in some ways here, but it's all your ancillary systems
Yes.
that feed off of your primary, right? Whether it's your general ledger, whether it's your reporting, whether it's your print, you have to think about those things as well in the entire process and project plan as you're putting it together. And if they run, as Angie said, if they run concurrently, that's where you're going to get your best output. You don't keep something till the end, because then what you built at the front may not work with it. Right. So well said.
Right. I think the other part of that too is when you start making changes, everyone thinks about how to get these things in, but you got to maintain these things once they get to production. And then you start going to change control requests and change in the system. Being able to do what we provide, we call where used report on a particular piece of data. It says, where are all the places this data is used? So if I'm touching that thing, I know that, oh, I just impacted print. I just impacted rating. I just impacted the billing feed. You can see that pretty quickly and easily. Depending on the system, with ours, you can do that, and you can then know what are you impacting. So when you start changing something, you know where to start regression testing also.
And that's where the key to agile systems really comes into play. With the insurance landscape continuously evolving, from regulations to competition to customer expectations. I mean, everyone wants that, one click, give me a quote, give me a policy, like within, seconds at this point. How can insurers proactively stay ahead of the trends that are out there and regulations and remain agile, speaking of, and responsive to the changing market?
Partner with good vendors.
Mhm.
Of course, I'm biased on this topic, right? Because I work for a vendor. And so obviously I'm going to say that. But no, there are vendors, third-party technology vendors exist for a reason. And the reason that we exist is because we can focus on a topic or a piece of technology or a business process, and we can become experts on that business process. And we can provide technology to carriers that they can utilize that they could never develop on their own. And most carriers would never have the staff or time or money to build what vendors build. And so when you're thinking about, being able to stay ahead and ahead of your expectations of your customers, I think you really have to rely on good vendors to help you provide those capabilities.
Yeah, I would agree, because if you think about it, we have multiple clients. We're pulling in revenue for that, and that revenue goes back into R&D, which allows us to then take multiple pieces of money and put it together to keep that product ahead of the market and to keep things moving forward. If you're trying to do that all yourself, you've only got so much to work with. And we can concentrate on that problem. We've seen it. We've been there. We've done it multiple times. We've seen it in multiple implementations. We know what different things you're hitting. So, we're gathering all that feedback and trying to make our products better and to keep up with the competition. Because if you don't, you die. So it's a matter of do or die in my mind. So I'd rather not die, I'd rather do. So that's why we always are trying to make sure that we're looking at the latest things and trying to make sure we got the right features and approach it that way to make sure our product is always relevant.
As the customer in this, everything Angie and Chris just said, right? We purchase third-party software specifically for that reason, right? We're now in it with many others as well, and it's basically, in our opinion, our vendor's job to stay on top of the industry trends, the norms, the new stuff that's coming out from a technology and a business to an extent, but mostly technology perspective, and kind of have those offerings available. We're very intrigued by roadmaps, right? What the roadmaps are of our vendors, specifically just to make sure we're not hearing about something in the industry that they haven't. And 99% of the time that's not true. We've usually heard it from them. But that's the key, is to align yourself with good vendors, have an open communication. And I would say align yourself with a vendor where you matter to their roadmap too, where you can have some input into that, where they're intrigued with what you're seeing and hearing, wanting to do, abilities you might want to see put into the product. And if you do that, you're going to feel pretty good about what your choice every single time. Because if you don't align with a vendor that's listening to you, you're going to get what they're giving you instead of having that input into what you might want to be given. And I think in the cases that we've chosen, we've made some really good decisions, and we do have those open lines of communication.
Yeah, I think that is important, obviously, because the way, again, our system is so configurable. You imagine how you think people are going to use it, but it's always interesting to see how people actually use it. And so when you start seeing those use cases and you see the way they're doing things, and you're like, wow, I never thought of that angle. You could use it for that. And then you start learning from that. You start propagating that knowledge out. And then you start saying, oh, well, it'd be really nice if I could. That's those are the things I always like to hear. And I'm always writing those things down, putting them into my list, putting in my backlog. And then we try to work forward and, try to get our clients to, vote on some of these things and say, what do you think is the most important? These are things we've heard from, 20 of you. Which ones resonate the most? We'll hit those first, obviously, and then we'll hit the other ones a little bit later. As an example, manuscript endorsements was a huge problem. I think, Angie, we tackled that, 10 years ago, right? Trying to make sure that we have a very efficient way to handle manuscript endorsements, because we had a lot of specialty markets. And we worked together with Ghost Drafts, came up with a very nice way to capture that manuscript, put that into the document, order it in the print sequence, and make sure you can change it across your transactions. And there's a great example where, this is a decade ago, I know, but we listened to our clients, we saw it as a pain point, and then we addressed it.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, this has been great. We have time for a few more questions. So let's go back to customer expectations. So how do customer expectations influence the need for speed to market? And what steps, and Jeff, this is probably a good question for you to lead off with, what steps can carriers take to align their offerings with these evolving customer demands?
Yeah. Yeah. So what I've seen in my career, I've been in the insurance IT now for about 30 years, is it used to be, we have a product, we're thinking about it. IT might catch wind of it, be able to start kind of asking some questions, maybe getting some requirements. But of course, like we started off with, right? The filings have to occur, they have to be approved. There's going to be modifications and changes to that. At this point, where we're at is how quickly can you get us out there after the approval, right? After this product is approved, how quickly is it going to take IT? And if it used to take, let's just say hypothetically, it used to take 2 years and we got it down to a year for a new state rollout, that's now what the expectation is, right? And some of the churn that happens beforehand, whether you had 8 months, 9 months, 10 months of IT development time, it just keeps getting narrower and narrower, right? And it's part of the marketplace too. I mean, like the whole concept here is the speed, right? Well, there's a reason you want the speed to market too, right? There's an opportunity there, there's profitability there, there's different reasons why. So for us, the technology has had to keep up in order to close the window for us to be able to get that product out quicker, cleaner, less bugs, that type of stuff. And I've just watched that window of time closing in my years in the industry. And I think the other thing that's interesting is when I started at a big carrier. There wasn't as much state expansion, right? They were in most of the states. I feel like now we're seeing a lot more rollouts of products and keeping up with new things that are out there in the insurance world and the insurance marketplace. And so the desire for product rollout and for state expansion, in my opinion, has increased through the years. It has not decreased. And again, it's that speed to market that the business wants. When can we start making profit on what we are waiting for you to complete? And so for us, again, that has to do with aligning yourselves with vendors of choice that have configurable systems that we can do the work very quickly, get output of that work, even in our development life cycle, be able to show that work as we're developing so the business can correct it, can make changes, can see what that's going to be. Certainly Sapiens and GhostDraft work very well with that. If you think about the end product being print, we're able to do things like take XML from Sapiens, inject it into some tools that GhostDraft has to be able to show those documents and show what the end product is going to be before we even go live, before we even get to UAT testing, before we even get to QA testing, just in the development lifecycle. That has narrowed the window for us on how quickly we can now roll out how quickly the projects go, how quickly we can get the product out. But that's the biggest thing I've seen is the window of time that they're asking IT to complete a project after those approvals has certainly narrowed. It has not expanded, and there seems to be more of it than ever before.
Yep. And with that opportunity, and you want to make sure those opportunities don't pass you by for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, where I'm seeing a lot of things from the market is, everyone wants things now instantaneously. They want to be able to access their documents, when they will pay their bill, they want to do it from their phones. They want to be able to, do some of the stuff themselves. Why do I have to send in a change request to an agent to go and replace my vehicle? So, the issue you run into, though, is a lot of the admin systems, of course, were never built for that. So how do you handle that? The classic thing I'm seeing now a lot of is putting a portal in front of that admin system. That's the classic thing I'm seeing a lot of, which, looks great and sounds great, but then you start running the realities of, well, how are you going to maintain that? When you do that speed to market that Jeff talked about, you add a brand new coverage or a brand new option or something. Now you got to maintain that oftentimes with now multiple systems, because you've got a portal for the underwriter, you've got a portal for the agent, you've got a portal, and it's kind of crazy to think about having to maintain all that and then test all that. So, part of the way we approach that problem is that UI is just another extension in the admin system. It is a configured UI that sits on top of the same model, the same rating rules, the same forms. Obviously, the audience is very different. You know, when you put in something in front of a consumer, you've got to put a lot of help around that. You got to work it through in a nice guided wizard-like flow. You know, but again, if you're trying to do that with an external system and maintain all those rules and then test it and coordinate it, it's a nightmare. And I'm seeing a lot of slowdown in the market now because they're trying to get it out there to make sure people have access, but then they can't maintain that as easily because they got to make sure that that filing change, it's the 2, 3, 4 systems. So be able to have something where you can configure it quickly, having something that can sit on top of it where, you know, the UI can change based upon the model. That's a huge advantage that you know, we bring to the table with how we approach things.
Excellent, excellent. Now, here's an interesting question. So I know that, you know, in the industry now, AI is all the buzz. So AI is everywhere. So in what ways can AI be leveraged, artificial intelligence, for those of you out there that aren't familiar with that? In what ways can AI be leveraged to streamline processes, ultimately contributing to faster time to market for insurance products?
You want to start on that one, Jeff? Or you want me to take a shot?
Please, Chris. I'm interested in your answer first.
Right. So we've been looking at AI in numerous ways to try to improve some of these processes. Let's start up with the underwriting process. You know, up front, you know, a lot of times, especially in commercial lines, you're gathering all sorts of information from different sources, trying to pull it together, and you got numerous feeds and so forth. So one of these things that AI can do is summarize documentation pretty effectively. So what we're seeing then is the ability to use AI to take 30, 40 pages of documentation and pull it down into a nice summary of 1 or 2 pages. That can then speed the underwriter up, and then they can then dig in more if they want to. If the AI kind of, you know, alert you to something, you can dive into more in that specific area. But a lot of times you're getting back clean reports on things, and you're like, well, that's, you know, ho-hum. Don't let the underwriter, you know, waste time on reading 10 pages to find out there's really no issue in that particular area. So that's one area that we've been exploring about how to summarize documentation effectively. We've been exploring how to use AI to speed up configuration. One of the things that we're seeing is if you can actually, you know, use AI to actually speak into it, basically to give the rule or type into, I should say, you know, there are ways to have that then do some of the configuration for you. So Jeff, that might be something you might see coming up in a release or two, is what we can actually use that to help speed configuration up. Other ways that we've seen it is, you know, the typical things I see more in claims, fraud detection. You know, there's things that you can pick up on that to see how the data is entered, how to you know, weed out claims. One of the most interesting things I saw was people are looking at voice pattern recognitions to see how nervous they sound when they're on the phone, and that might be a way to pick out fraud if someone's doing like an IVR where you know they're reporting the claim through a phone system. I thought that was pretty intriguing that you could actually get the nuances of people's voices about when they're lying. You know, so there's all sorts of different things that I think people are playing with. Now, the interesting thing to me is, how do you get that past that POC stage and getting into a productionized thing? Because you do see a lot of things with AI where you get false positives, you get things where things get kicked out and they shouldn't have gotten out. So I think the industry is battling with those things, trying to come up with better models that are more precise. The way I like to look at it is AI can suggest things, but you got to put guardrails around it, because at the end of the day, you know, you're responsible and you can't let your computer drive everything for you. You got to make sure that a human can intercept and or adjust that if need be until these things get even better.
Agreed. Agreed.
Nailed it. Yeah, the only thing we think we might be able to do with AI that might be a little bit different is somebody who maybe is 2 years into a position with AI tools that are out there today, whether it's a claims adjuster, whether it's an underwriter. We think maybe with some of the tools that are out there, it might get them to a 5-year kind of experience with some of the help that they could get from, you know, from a large language model type questions and things like that. But all through like what Chris just described, through extraction of large documents of putting together letters, those type of things as well. So that's where we're kind of focused right now.
Yeah, and GhostDraft is as well, with migration and conversion of forms from legacy systems to these newer systems as well, and that will help speed up that process. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, well, we're approaching the end of our time today. We want to extend a heartfelt thanks to our panelists, Jeff, Angie, and Chris, for sharing their invaluable insights and expertise with us today. And we hope you found this discussion enlightening and inspirational in your approach to Insurtech. Staying ahead of the curve is really vital in today's marketplace. So if you have any questions or you want to learn more, visit ghostdraft.com or sapiens.com, or just reach out to any one of our panelists here. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our future webinars. Have a great day.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.